Hello, this is Barbara Ozuna, one of your two Deans of Instruction, and our job today is to go over the major highlights of the Guide to Grade reporting for the 2015-2016 school year. Rest assured, a full copy of this Guide to Grade reporting will be in your inbox via email for you to look at. These are just the highlights. You will note that the Guide to Grade reporting has not changed much between last year and this year. The purpose of grading is still for information, to give parents and students information on their relative mastery and on their success in learning, guidance for both teachers and students so that we know how well a class or an individual student is doing, to motivate students and encourage them to maximum achievement, and also for administration so that we have data sets to help us in educational planning and decision making. Please note that it is also incredibly important for administration to note teachers who have high failure rates. That would be a teacher with a failure rate of more than 20%. These kinds of patterns and trends are looked at in order to make some decisions based on appropriate teaching of content and certainly appropriate student pacing. The system of grading is intended to ensure that grades reflect a student's relative mastery of an assignment and relative mastery of the TEKS. The guidelines to the grades should be clearly reported with a course syllabus. And according to Fort Worth ISD policy, and this is very important, a student who has received a failing grade must be afforded an opportunity to redo an assignment or retake a test for which that failing grade was received. Lastly, the grading system tells us that a teacher needs to notify parents of a major drop in grades. That is considered to be a drop of 10 or more points. Teachers are required to post grades. Teachers are required to post grades weekly in the online gradebook system. This is the system that we use called Focus. The parent portal links to this Focus gradebook, and it is used to help parents know where their students are in relation to the work that's been assigned. Although it is a great way of communicating with parents, it is not the only communication tool, and written notices and parent conferences are highly encouraged, especially for students who are not seeming to do well. Grades on student work will be recorded numerically, and this must be recorded in the teacher's gradebook. You are, of course, allowed to weight grades into categories. Please remember that these categories should have been determined by now and that they should be delineated in your class syllabus. And please also realize that those weights should be appropriate and that everyone in your content area should have the same weights for the same types of assignments. Progress reports are going to be continued this year. We are going to continue giving out progress reports. Please remember that all students will receive a progress report when Ms. Boatner tells you that progress reports are being captured. However, please also note that there are specific times when a teacher must print out and give out progress reports and must notify parents. Please understand that sending a progress report home that doesn't get returned signed is not considered notification. And if you fail to notify a parent of a drop in grade, again, that is a 10-point drop in grade, students shall be afforded the opportunity to make up the work to regain the grade before the 10-point drop. Please also understand that a progress report signed and returned should be expected for students who have excessive absences and a student whose conduct is N needs improvement or U unsatisfactory. By now, you should have given out your course syllabus. Before the end of the second week of attendance, teachers must have provided students with a written course syllabus and the grading procedures that include the weighting of the categories that will make up the total grade. We've discussed the fact that students have an opportunity to make up work for grades below a 70. Please understand that there are very specific guidelines to that. Allowing students to redo or make up work helps to promote the relative mastery of assignments, and that is better than awarding the automatic grades that we used to have to do not so long ago. Teachers should help designate a reasonable timeline to redo these assignments. Students should have a reasonable opportunity to make up or redo these assignments. Retests will be administered on the campus, and the grade for these assignments should be no higher than a 70. Please remember that grades are supposed to help determine the relative mastery of the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. The Fort Worth ISD developed curriculum helps provide guidance with both formal and informal assessment activities to be used in determining the grades. Please note that formative and summative assessments are completely appropriate and highly encouraged to help determine an individual student's mastery of the TEKS. Homework is incredibly important for students and for teachers and for parents. Homework helps families be involved in the process of learning. Homework communicates the expectations of the schools, and homework helps students develop self-discipline and organizational skills. Homework should never be something that is pure rote memorization. Homework should be meaningful. Homework should never be more than 30 minutes worth of what a student can do. Not what teachers think they can do, but what students can do in about 30 minutes for 4 of the 5 days that they are in school. And lastly, please remember that this year especially, we have many Thursday night football games. Look at what you're assigning for homework on Thursday nights. Think about what you're doing on Friday during the day, and try to have meaningful activities so that children are not expected to do a lot of out-of-school assignments on Thursday night, and that when they come to school tired on Friday, that they are not expected to take a heavy test for which they may not be prepared and for which they may be too tired to take seriously. Again, we have lots of Thursday night games, and remember that involves a good third of the student body at any one time, so please be mindful of that. Calculating grades is always an interesting conundrum. According to the Guide to Grade Reporting, homework is only allowed to be counted for 10% of the daily work grade. Formative and informal assessments may include teacher-documented observations and can count as much as you wish for it to. Summative and formal assessments may include unit tests, quizzes, chapter tests, etc., and may also count as much as you think they should. Calculating grades, as I said, is always an issue. Please remember that according to Fort Worth ISD policy, there must be 8 grades documented each 6 weeks. You can argue about what's a good number of grades and what isn't, and I really need you guys to talk to your content teams and make sure that each of you who are teaching the same class have about the same number of grades with the same number of weights, so that one teacher doesn't have 12 homework grades and 2 test grades, while another teacher has 8 homework grades and 1 test grade, simply because we've got to make sure that the weights of all of these categories and the number of assignments within those weights are about equal. Please remember that there must be at least 4 grades given each 3 weeks, which means that when the snapshot, when your account is frozen by Stephanie for progress report purposes, you must have 4 grades in the gradebook. Please remember that you are allowed to give a 6 weeks test, but it cannot be one of the 8 grades. So that means you must have at least 9 grades if you choose to give a 6 weeks test, which is highly encouraged. And please also remember that parents have access to your focus gradebook on a regular basis, and they tell on you. So please understand, you must have 4 grades each 3 weeks. If you don't, your grades are going to look like they're not appropriate. And parents are going to monitor. We as the administration are also going to monitor the grade books much more carefully. So please enter those grades like you need to. Citizenship grades are also important. Remember, you've got S's, which is satisfactory, E's, which stand for excellent, and then we have the higher levels of citizenship grades, which is the N that indicates that a student needs improvement, and a U, which indicates that a student's conduct is unsatisfactory. You should have some indication in your syllabus as to what constitutes an N or a U, and please remember that many honor societies at Paschal will not allow students to come in with N's. We have also in the recent past determined that if students are breaking the honor code at Paschal High School, and you have documented that in your syllabus, that giving a student an N in citizenship is not a bad thing to do for that type of consequence, for that type of action. Please notify parents. It must be documented. Reteaching is a vital part of instruction. Please understand that reteaching should be done across the board. It is absolutely appropriate for you to cluster children together into a group while one teacher does the reteaching and another teacher moves on. This is what formative assessments are so good at determining. You also, of course, need to determine a time when each core department has structured departmental tutoring that will help students learn what they haven't understood. Please remember that course credit is done on a semester by semester basis. What that means is that you have a first semester grade and a second semester grade. That is also taken into consideration that attendance is good. Remember, there is a 90% attendance rule. But in general, if a student fails the first semester, passes the second semester, and that pass averages to an averaging grade, the student will get the high school credit. If, however, a student passes the first semester, fails the second semester, even if it could be combined for a pass average, that student will not get credit for the second semester. Please remember that all students are allowed to make up work for absences. It used to be that only excused absences were allowed to have time for makeup. That is no longer the case. The Guide to Grade Reporting says that all students are allowed to have 1 day grace for each day missed without penalty. Also, please remember that incomplete grades need to be made up within the next reporting period, or grades need to change to 0 in order for an average to be calculated. We cannot have eyes on transcripts and on report cards for more than 1 6 weeks. Please remember that just because a child is misbehaving in your class, you cannot lower their academic grade. The only thing you can do is lower their conduct grade. Also remember that the curve system is not allowed. That means that anything that might predetermine the distribution of grades shall not be used. There are other ways to give students extra points so that grades are reported accurately. That is up to you. What cannot happen is the traditional curve where 10% of students get A's, 10% get F's, and 50% get C's. Please remember that report cards are a communication instrument, and when you're asked to distribute them, you should also ask to have them returned to the school. This is a short synopsis of the Guide to Grade Reporting. I hope you enjoyed our presentation. I will be emailing you the actual Guide to Grade Reporting so that you can look it up and keep it with you. Grades are an important part of high school life, so please make sure you have read that document carefully. Thanks so much.